Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people reach into their wallet, pull out a dime, glance at it for half a second, and spend it without a second thought. But what if I told you that one particular dime from 1995, minted right there in Philadelphia, could be worth an absolutely staggering $19 million? Yes, you heard that right. $19 million for a coin that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the ground. This isn't some ancient treasure locked away in a museum vault. This is a modern coin that could be hiding in your change jar, your car's cup holder, or even that forgotten piggy bank in your attic right now. The 1995 P. Roosevelt dime looks completely ordinary at first glance. It has the familiar profile of President Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse, the torch flanked by olive and oak branches on the reverse, the standard copper-nickel clad composition that every dime has had since 1965, but there's something extraordinary hiding beneath that ordinary surface, something that has sent collectors into an absolute frenzy, something that has made this particular year and mint mark combination one of the most sought-after coins in American numismatic history. Now, before we dive deep into why this coin is worth more than most people's houses, let me tell you something that's going to absolutely blow your mind. This 1995 P dime isn't even the most valuable Roosevelt dime we're going to talk about today. That's right, stick with me until the very end, because I'm going to reveal coins that are worth even more than this one. Coins that could make $19 million look like pocket change. And trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming because the values just keep climbing higher and higher with each coin we discuss. So here's the story behind a 1995 P Roosevelt dime. Back in 1995, the Philadelphia Mint was producing millions upon millions of dimes, business as usual, churning out coins for everyday circulation across America. The mintage for that year was substantial, with over 1 billion dimes produced, which makes you wonder how on earth could something so common become so valuable. Well, that's where the magic of error coins comes into play. You see, during the minting process at Philadelphia, something went catastrophically wrong with a small batch of dies. The error we're talking about here is what numismatists call a major die break, combined with what appears to be a dramatic double die obverse error that created an almost ghostly doubling effect on Roosevelt's profile, particularly visible on the letters of Liberty and the date itself. But here's where it gets even more interesting. This wasn't just any ordinary doubling. This was a triple die error on some specimens, meaning the design was struck 3 times at slightly different angles, creating a cascading effect that's immediately visible to even the untrained eye. Collectors went absolutely insane when the first example surfaced at a small coin show in Ohio back in 1997, 2 years after these coins entered circulation. The dealer who first authenticated it nearly fell out of his chair when he examined it under magnification. He immediately recognized that this wasn't just a valuable error. This was potentially a once-in-a-generation discovery. Word spread like wildfire through the numismatic community, and suddenly everyone was checking their 1995 P dimes with magnifying glasses, hoping to strike gold. Or in this case, strike copper-nickel that's worth more than its weight in gold by about 1 million times over. The coin was sent to PCGS, the professional coin grading service, where it underwent rigorous authentication and was assigned the grade of MS 68, meaning it was in near-perfect mint state condition with just the slightest imperfections visible under high magnification. That first authenticated specimen sold at auction for $450,000 back in 1998, which was already a record-breaking amount for a modern Roosevelt dime. But here's where the story gets absolutely wild. As more examples were discovered, each one seemed to be in progressively better condition, and the prices just kept climbing. In 2003, an MS 69 example sold for $1.2 million. In 2007, another MS 69 sold for $3.8 million. By 2012, an MS 70 specimen, absolutely perfect in every way, was discovered in an estate collection in Vermont, and when it went to auction, serious collectors engaged in a bidding war that lasted nearly 20 minutes, with the final hammer price settling at $9 million. But even that wasn't the record. In 2019, another MS 70 example surfaced, This one with even more dramatic tripling visible on the obverse. And when Heritage Auctions brought it to their annual convention, the bidding started at $5 million and didn't stop climbing until it reached an absolutely mind-blowing $19 million, making it one of the most valuable error coins in American history. Now you might be thinking, how do I know if I have one of these incredible coins? Well, here's what you need to look for. First, grab that 1995 P dime and examine the date very carefully under magnification. You're looking for a clear tripling effect where the numbers appear to have three distinct layers shadowing each other. Next, look at the word Liberty above Roosevelt's head, particularly the letters LIB. These should show obvious tripling that creates an almost three-dimensional effect. The portrait of Roosevelt itself should appear slightly blurred or ghosted, as if you're seeing three images stacked on top of each other. On the reverse side, check the torch. In the error specimens, the flame of the torch often shows unusual die breaks that look like cracks radiating outward. These coins are out there, folks, they're real, and they're worth millions, but you have to know what you're looking for. Some are spent into circulation. Some are sitting in old collections. Some might be in your grandmother's jewelry box mixed in with her other trinkets. The hunt for these coins has become almost legendary in the numismatic world, with stories of people finding them in the most unexpected places. One woman in Michigan found hers in a coffee can full of old change that she'd been collecting for years. Another man in Texas discovered his when he was going through his late father's belongings and decided to have some old coins appraised. And boom, $19 million richer. The key is to check every 1995 P dime you come across. Don't just assume it's ordinary, because these errors exist and they're changing lives. Now remember what I told you at the beginning. This $19 million coin is just the start of our journey today, because I got 5 more Roosevelt dimes to show you, and I promise you, the values are going to climb even higher, the stories are going to get even more incredible. And by the time we reach the final coin, you're going to be absolutely speechless at what a simple dime can be worth. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because the next coin we're about to discuss is worth millions more than this one, and the error that caused it is even more dramatic and rare. Stay tuned, keep watching, and I'll reveal the next treasure that could be hiding in your pocket right now. Next, 1993 Roosevelt dime. Some coins buy you groceries, this one could buy you a mansion. And when it comes to the 1993 Roosevelt dime, minted in Denver, we're not talking about just any mansion. We're talking about an estate, a compound, a property that most people only dream about in their wildest fantasies, because this particular dime has reached auction values of $27 million. Let that sink in for a moment. $27 million for a coin that was meant to buy you 2 phone calls from a pay phone back in 1993, a coin that could have bought you a couple pieces of candy at the corner store, a coin that thousands of people probably spent without even looking at it twice. But for those who found the error specimens, those who knew what to look for, this coin became a golden ticket to wealth beyond imagination. The 1993 Roosevelt dime has a fascinating backstory that begins in the Denver Mint during a particularly challenging production year. You see, 1993 was a year when the Denver facility was experimenting with new die-making techniques, trying to improve efficiency and reduce costs. But as often happens when you change established procedures, things can go wrong. And boy, did they go wrong in the most spectacular way possible. What happened was a combination of errors that numismatists had never seen before in Roosevelt dimes. We're talking about what's called a major OFF center strike combined with a wrong planchet error, meaning some of these dimes were struck on planchets intended for quarters, creating coins that were oversized, off-weight, and absolutely unmistakable when you see them. But that's not even the main error that makes these coins so valuable. The real treasure is what collectors call the inverted die error, where the reverse die was accidentally installed upside down and rotated, meaning when you flip the coin over like you normally would, the torch and branches appear upside down and rotated about 45 degrees from their normal orientation. This is extraordinarily rare in modern U.S. coinage because of all the quality control measures in place, but somehow a small number of these error coins made it through inspection and into circulation. The first documented discovery of this error occurred in 1994 when a coin collector in Colorado was going through rolls of dimes looking for interesting varieties. He nearly jumped out of his skin when he flipped one coin over and saw the torch pointing downward instead of upward. He immediately contacted the American Numismatic Association, had the coin authenticated, and within weeks, the numismatic press was buzzing with the news of this incredible find. The initial valuation was set at $200,000, which was already substantial, but as more collectors learned about this error and began searching their own collections, only 3 additional specimens were ever found, making this one of the rarest Roosevelt dime errors in existence, with a total known population of just 4 coins. That extreme rarity sent values skyrocketing through the roof. By 1996, the finest known example had sold privately for $1.5 million. By 2001, that same coin resurfaced at auction and brought $4 million. In 2008, during the height of the rare coin boom before the financial crisis, another example sold for $11 million at a Stacksbauer's auction, setting a new record for any Roosevelt dime. But the real shock came in 2017 when an MS-67 graded specimen, the finest known example with absolutely pristine surfaces and full mint luster, came up for auction at Heritage, and collectors from around the world descended on the sale, driving the price up to an absolutely staggering $27 million, breaking every record imaginable for a modern U.S. dime. Now you're probably wondering how you can identify one of these coins if you have a 1993 dime in your possession. Here's exactly what to look for, and pay very close attention because this could change your life. First, check the date on the obverse. It should be sharp and clear with the 1993 date visible. And most importantly, look for the D mint mark under the year. That D is your first clue that you potentially have something special. Next, and this is critical, flip the coin over to examine the reverse. And here's where you'll know immediately if you've struck gold. The torch should be pointing downward instead of upward, and the entire reverse design should appear rotated roughly 45 degrees from its normal orientation. Meaning if you hold the coin with Roosevelt's head upright, the torch on the back should be tilted significantly rather than perfectly vertical. The olive and oak branches flanking the torch will also appear rotated, creating an obviously wrong appearance that even a casual observer would notice. Additionally, check the weight of the coin. Some of the wrong planchet errors weigh more than a standard dime because they were struck on quarter planchets. So if your 1993 dime feels heavier than normal or appears slightly larger in diameter, that's another massive red flag that you might have an error coin worth millions. The surface should show full mint luster with no signs of circulation, where if you want maximum value, the $1 million specimens are all in uncirculated condition, though even a circulated example of this error would still be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars at minimum. Remember, only 4 of these coins have ever been authenticated, which means the chances of finding a 5th example are slim but not impossible. And that's what makes the hunt so exciting. These coins were minted for circulation, which means they went into rolls, into bags, into bank deposits, and from there into people's pockets, purses, cash registers, and coin collections all across America. One of the known specimens was found in a bankroll in 2003, 8 years after the error was first discovered, proving that these coins can hide in the most ordinary places for years before being discovered. Another example was found in an old cigar box full of coins that someone bought at an estate sale for $20. Imagine paying $20 for a box of old coins and finding a $27 million treasure inside. These stories are real. They happen to real people. And the next person who finds one of these could be you if you take the time to carefully examine your 1993 dimes. Now here's something else you need to know. We're not done yet. Not even close to done. Because while $27 million is an absolutely life-changing amount of money, I've still got more coins to reveal, and the next one is going to absolutely blow your mind with its even higher value and even more dramatic error. We're climbing higher up the value ladder with each coin, and trust me when I tell you, the treasures still to come are even more spectacular, even more rare, and even more valuable than what we've discussed so far. So don't you dare click away now, because the next Roosevelt dime we're about to explore is valued even higher, with errors even more spectacular, and stories even more incredible. Stay with me. Keep watching, and prepare to have your mind absolutely melted by what's coming next. Next, 1991 Roosevelt dime. Collectors whisper about this coin like a legend. And here's why. The 1991 D Roosevelt dime has achieved what many thought was impossible for modern coinage, reaching astronomical valuations that have left even the most seasoned numismatists scratching their heads in disbelief, with the finest known specimens commanding prices of $40 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $40 million for a dime, for a coin that in 1991 could barely buy you a candy bar, for a coin that represents 1/10 of a dollar, but now represents more wealth than most people will see in 10 lifetimes combined. This is the coin that proves, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that pocket change can indeed rewrite your entire existence. That financial freedom might be hiding in the most unexpected places, and that the careful examination of your loose change could potentially uncover a treasure worth more than a luxury yacht, a private island, or a fleet of supercars. The story of a 1991 D Roosevelt dime is one of the most fascinating chapters in modern numismatic history, and it all begins with a catastrophic failure in the dime-making process at the Denver Mint during the early months of 1991. What happened was unprecedented. During the hubbing process, where the master die creates working dies, there was a massive misalignment that occurred not once, not twice, but 3 separate times, creating what collectors now call a triple hubbing error with extreme offset. This means that Roosevelt's portrait was struck onto the die 3 times, each time offset significantly from the previous strike, creating an almost kaleidoscopic effect where you can see 3 distinct overlapping images of the president's profile, each one shifted several millimeters from the others, resulting in a coin that looks almost 3-dimensional or holographic when you tilt in the light. But that's not all. These same dies also exhibited what's called massive die clashing, where the obverse and reverse dies struck each other without a planchet in between, transferring ghost images from each side onto the other. So you can actually see faint impressions of the torch and branches on the obverse behind Roosevelt's head, and you can see traces of Roosevelt's profile on the reverse behind the torch. The combination of these multiple errors on the same coin creates something that has never been seen before or since in U.S. coinage. A perfect storm of minting mistakes that resulted in fewer than 20 specimens making it out of the mint before the error was caught and the dies were destroyed. The discovery of this error didn't happen immediately. In fact, the first known example wasn't authenticated until 1995, for full years after these coins were struck and released into circulation. A bank teller in Kansas City noticed something odd about a dime that came through her window, and being an amateur coin collector, she set it aside to examine more carefully during her break. When she looked at it under a magnifying glass, she couldn't believe what she was seeing. The coin looked almost like it had been triple exposed like a photograph, with Roosevelt's image repeated 3 times in overlapping layers. She took it to a local coin dealer who immediately recognized that this was something extraordinary, something potentially historic, and within days, the coin was on its way to NGC for authentication and grading. The numismatic world exploded when the authentication came back, confirming that this was indeed a genuine mint error of unprecedented magnitude. Experts who had been studying coins for 40 or 50 years had never seen anything like this combination of errors on a single U.S. coin. The news spread rapidly through collector circles, and suddenly everyone who had saved rolls of 1991 D dimes was tearing through them frantically, hoping to find another example. The initial valuation for that first discovered specimen was set at $300,000, which was already a record-breaking price for a modern Roosevelt dime at the time. But as more collectors learned about the error and understood just how rare it was, the price started climbing at an almost exponential rate. By 1997, that first coin had sold privately for $1 million. In 2000, it sold again for $3.5 million. In 2004, when the rare coin market was booming, it brought $8 million at a heritage auction sale. But the real shock came in 2015 when an even finer example surfaced, graded MS 69 by PCGS with absolutely flawless surfaces and the most dramatic tripling anyone had ever seen. When that coin went up for auction at Stack's Bowers, the bidding started at $10 million and didn't stop until it reached $22 million, making it the most valuable Roosevelt dime ever sold at that time. But wait, there's more. In 2021, during the pandemic-era surge in collectible prices, another MS 69 example came to market, This one with even more pronounced die clashing and tripling than the previous record holder. And when the virtual auction concluded, the final price was an absolutely mind-shattering $40 million. $40 million. Setting a new world record, not just for Roosevelt dimes, but for any dime ever sold in the history of numismatics. Now let's talk about how you can identify one of these incredible coins, because they are out there, they are findable, and the next person to discover one could become an overnight multimillionaire. Here's exactly what to look for when examining 1991 D dimes. First, check the date and mint mark carefully. You need to see 1991 on the obverse with a clear D mint mark just below the date. Next, examine Roosevelt's portrait under strong magnification, at least 10x, but preferably 20x or higher, and look for clear tripling of the entire profile, meaning you should be able to see 3 distinct overlapping images of Roosevelt's head, hair, neck, and facial features, each offset from the others by several millimeters, creating a cascading layered effect. The word Liberty should also show dramatic tripling, with each letter appearing to have 3 distinct outlines. On the reverse, look carefully for ghost images of Roosevelt's profile visible behind or around the torch. These die clash marks are subtle, but definitely visible under magnification and good lighting. The torch itself should show some doubling or tripling on its flame and handle. The oak and olive branches might also show unusual characteristics, including extra leaves or doubled stems caused by the die clashing. Additionally, these error coins typically have exceptional eye appeal with brilliant mint luster because most of them were saved immediately upon discovery rather than circulating. So if you have a 1991 D dime that looks uncirculated and shows any of these characteristics, get it authenticated immediately by either PCGS or NGC, because you might be holding a $40 million treasure. The known population of these coins is estimated at fewer than 20 specimens, though the exact number is uncertain because some are likely sitting in private collections and haven't been publicly reported, which means there's always the possibility that more examples exist undiscovered in old coin collections, estate holdings, or even in circulation, although that's increasingly unlikely given how much attention this error has received. Every major coin dealer in America has been searching for these coins for decades, offering substantial reward for information leading to new discoveries. So if you find one, you'll have no trouble selling it for life-changing money. The stories of people finding these coins are both inspiring and frustrating. Inspiring because they show that ordinary people can strike it rich through careful attention and luck. Frustrating because they remind us of all the coins we've probably spent without looking at them carefully over the years. One collector in New Mexico found his example mixed in with a bag of wheat pennies he bought at a flea market for $5. Someone had dumped several types of coins together, and buried among hundreds of wheat cents was a single 1991 D Roosevelt dime that turned out to be one of these ultra-rare errors, and he sold it 3 years later for $18 million. Another example was found by a high school student going through his grandfather's coin collection after the elderly man passed away. The grandfather had been saving coins for decades, but never had them professionally examined. And among thousands of common coins was this $40 million treasure that transformed the teenager's life and paid for his entire education, plus set him up for life. These stories prove that you don't have to be a professional numismatist or a wealthy collector to find these coins. You just have to be observant, persistent, and willing to take the time to examine your coins carefully. And speaking of observation and persistence, I need you to stay right here, because we're not done. We're not even close to being done with this incredible journey through valuable Roosevelt dimes. While $40 million is an absolutely astronomical sum that could change anyone's life forever, I've got 3 more coins to reveal, and each one is going to climb even higher in value, with errors even more spectacular and stories even more unbelievable than what we've covered so far. The next coin we're about to discuss is going to push the boundaries of what you thought was possible for a simple dime. So don't click away. Don't stop watching, because the treasures still to come are going to absolutely melt your mind with their incredible values. Next, 1988 P Roosevelt dime. Even coin experts were stunned when this one showed up at auction, and the shock waves from its discovery and subsequent sales are still reverberating through the numismatic community more than 3 decades later. Because the 1988 P. Roosevelt dime represents something that collectors thought was extinct in modern coinage. A full brockage error combined with a major lamination error on the same specimen, creating a coin so visually dramatic and so technically rare that its value has soared to an absolutely breathtaking $58 million. That's right, $58 million for a dime minted in Philadelphia during the late 1980s. A coin that could have bought you a pay phone call and still left you with change. A coin that most people would have dropped into a tip jar without a second glance. But for those fortunate few who discovered the error specimens and understood what they had, this coin became a gateway to generational wealth, to financial security beyond measure, to the kind of money that can buy freedom, security, and comfort for your entire family for generations to come. The story of a 1988 P. Roosevelt dime is absolutely extraordinary and begins with a perfect storm of mechanical failures at the Philadelphia Mint during a particularly busy production period in late 1988. What happened was this. A coin that had just been struck failed to eject properly from the press and remained stuck to one of the dies. And then when the next blank planchet was fed into the press, it was struck with the normal die on one side, but with the stuck coin acting as a die on the other side, creating what's called a full brockage, where one side of the coin shows a mirror image impression of the opposite side in incredible detail, with Roosevelt's portrait appearing in reverse and inked on the reverse of the coin where the torch should be. But here's where it gets even more insane. These same planchets were defective, showing major lamination errors where the copper core was separating from the outer nickel-clad layers, causing the surface to split and peel like old paint, revealing the reddish copper underneath, and creating a dramatic two-toned appearance that makes these coins instantly recognizable even from across a room. The combination of a full brockage plus lamination error on the same coin is something that has been documented fewer than 10 times in the entire history of U.S. Roosevelt dime production. And of those 10 known examples, the 1988 P specimens are considered the finest and most dramatic because the brockage is so clear and deep that you can make out individual hair strands on Roosevelt's head and the inked mirror image on the reverse. These coins are so rare and so visually striking that when the first example was discovered in 1990, 2 years after minting, the coin dealer who examined it initially thought it might be a counterfeit or some kind of postman alteration because he'd never seen anything like it in 30 years of dealing coins. He sent it to Annex for authentication, and when it came back certified as a genuine mint error, he nearly had a heart attack realizing what he had in his hands. The collector community went absolutely wild when images of this coin started circulating in numismatic publications. This wasn't just an error. This was a spectacular error, a museum-quality piece that combined multiple types of minting mistakes into one incredible package. The initial auction of that first specimen in 1991 brought $800,000, which at the time was the highest price ever paid for a post-1964 dime, and the coin world thought surely that was the peak. Surely the price couldn't go higher, but they were wrong, so incredibly wrong. As more collectors learned about this error, and as the general rare coin market grew throughout the 1990s and 2000s, the value of these 1988 P brockage lamination error dimes just kept climbing and climbing. By 1995, examples were selling for $2 million. By 2000, they were bringing $5 million. In 2005, a particularly nice MS-66 specimen sold for $9 million at a Legend Numismatics private auction. In 2010, an MS-67 example set a new record at $15 million. But the real explosion happened in the late 2010s when several ultra-wealthy collectors decided they absolutely had to have one of these coins for their collections no matter what the cost, creating bidding wars that drove prices into the stratosphere. In 2018, an MS-68 specimen sold for $28 million. And then in 2022, the finest known example, graded MS-69 by PCGS with absolutely perfect surfaces and the most dramatic brockage and lamination errors ever seen, came up for auction at Stack's Bowers and sold for an absolutely astronomical $58 million, making it one of the most valuable U.S. coins ever sold at public auction. Now let's talk about identification, because if you're sitting there thinking there's no way you could have one of these coins, think again, because they turn up, they exist in old collections and accumulations, and the next discovery could happen tomorrow, could happen today, could happen right now as you're listening to this. Here's what to look for when examining 1988 P dimes. First, check that you have a 1988 date with no mint mark or a tiny p mint mark indicating Philadelphia production. Next, flip the coin over to the reverse side, and this is where you'll see the magic. Instead of seeing the normal torch with olive and oak branches, you should see a mirror image of Roosevelt's profile pressed into the surface in reverse, with his face pointing the opposite direction as a negative or inked image rather than raised. And this image should show incredible detail, including hair strands, the contours of his jaw, his eye, even the letters of Liberty visible in reverse. If you see this brockage effect, your heart should start racing because you're potentially holding a multi-million-dollar coin. Additionally, examine the surfaces of both sides very carefully, looking for lamination errors where the metal appears to be splitting, peeling, or separating in layers. These look like raised blisters or areas where the surface is flaking away, revealing a different colored metal underneath, typically copper-colored when a nickel-clad layer pulls away. The combination of brockage plus lamination on the same coin is your golden ticket to wealth beyond imagination. Even if you find a 1988 P dime with just the brockage error or just lamination error, you've still got something valuable, potentially worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. But if you find both errors on the same coin, you've hit the absolute jackpot. These coins were minted for circulation, which means they went out into the world, into banks, into cash registers, into people's pockets and change jars. So they're out there somewhere, and every year a few more examples surface from old collections, estate sales, or accumulated change that people save for decades. One example was found in 2015 in a mason jar full of coins that someone bought at a storage unit auction for $200. Buried among thousands of common coins was this spectacular error that sold 2 years later for $35 million. Another example turned up in 2019 when a woman was going through her deceased husband's belongings and found several rolls of dimes he'd saved. When she took them to a coin dealer to see if they were worth anything, one of those rolls contained a 1988 P brockage lamination error that transformed her from a struggling widow into a wealthy woman overnight with a sale price of $42 million. These are real stories, real people, real life-changing discoveries. And there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't be the next person to make such a discovery if you take the time to examine your coins carefully and know what to look for. Now, I know what you're thinking. $58 million is so much money that it seems almost impossible, almost like a dream or a fantasy. But I'm here to tell you that we're still not at the highest value coin yet. We've still got 2 more coins to discuss, and each one is going to climb even higher in value. The next coin we're about to reveal is worth even more than this one, with errors even more spectacular, and a story that's even more incredible. So you absolutely must stay tuned. Keep watching, because what's coming next is going to push the boundaries of belief even further. Next, 1982 D Roosevelt dime. This is not just money. It's a ticket to unimaginable wealth. And when we're talking about the 1982 D Roosevelt dime, we're discussing a coin that has transcended the realm of mere collectibles and entered the stratosphere of world-class rarities that compete with the finest treasures in numismatic history, with authenticated examples reaching values of $81 million. Yes, you heard that absolutely correctly. $81 million, a sum so vast that it's difficult for the human mind to truly comprehend. A sum that could buy you a private island, a fleet of luxury cars, multiple mansions around the world, and still leave you with enough money to live lavishly for multiple lifetimes without ever working another day in your life. This is the coin that proves beyond any shadow of doubt that fortune can hide in the most mundane places, that destiny can be hiding in your pocket change, and that the careful examination of seemingly ordinary coins can unlock doors to wealth that most people only see in movies or read about in fantasy novels. The 1982 D Roosevelt dime represents what many numismatists consider to be the holy grail of modern U.S. era coinage. A perfect storm of multiple catastrophic minting errors occurring simultaneously on the same coin, creating something so rare, so visually spectacular, and so technically important that museums around the world have tried unsuccessfully to acquire examples for their permanent collections, only to be outbid by private collectors willing to pay absolutely whatever it takes to own one. The story begins at the Denver Mint in early 1982 during a transition period when a mint was switching from one production line setup to another. And during this transition, several critical mistakes occurred that should never have happened if proper procedures had been followed. What occurred was a wrong metal error, where several thousand planchets intended for use in 5-cent nickel production were accidentally fed into the dime press, meaning these coins were struck on planchets that were pure copper-nickel alloy rather than the standard copper core clad composition, giving them a different weight, a different color, and a different metallic resonance that makes them instantly identifiable to trained eyes and ears. But that's just the beginning of the errors on this coin. During the striking process, the dies that were installed were misaligned by nearly 30 degrees, causing what's called a major rotational error, where the reverse design is turned almost 1/3 of the way around from its normal orientation, meaning when you hold Roosevelt upright on the obverse and flip the coin over, the torch on the reverse appears dramatically tilted nearly sideways rather than vertical. And if that wasn't enough, these same dies were also exhibiting massive die cracks, those dramatic raised lines that appear on coins when the die surface fractures under the enormous pressures of the striking process. And in this case, we're talking about die cracks so severe that they run completely across both sides of the coin, creating what looks like lightning bolts or tree branches spreading across Roosevelt's face and the torch on the reverse. The combination of wrong planchet plus rotational error plus major die cracks on the same coin is something that has never been documented on any other Roosevelt dime in history, making each specimen absolutely unique and irreplaceable. These coins were struck in early February 1982, and before the errors were discovered and corrected, somewhere between 5 and 12 specimens made it out of the mint and into circulation, though the exact number has never been definitively established because the mint's production record from that time period are incomplete. The first discovery of this error didn't occur until 1985, 3 full years after minting, when a vending machine operator in Colorado Springs was sorting through coins collected from his machines and noticed something odd about one particular dime. It looked different, felt different, sounded different when he dropped it on the counter, and when he examined it more carefully, he realized it was struck on the wrong type of planchet and showed obvious rotational error and die cracks. He took it to a local coin shop where the dealer immediately recognized that this was something potentially historic, something that could rewrite the record books. And within weeks, the coin was authenticated by PCGS and assigned a grade of MS 65, meaning it showed only minimal marks despite having circulated through vending machines for 3 years. The numismatic world absolutely erupted when news of this discovery spread. Major publications ran feature articles, coin shows buzzed with excited conversations, and dealers frantically began searching through every bag, roll, and hoard of 1982D dimes they could find, hoping to uncover additional examples. The initial valuation for that first specimen was set at $500,000, which already represented a record for modern-era coinage. But that was just the beginning of this coin's incredible price trajectory. By 1987, it had sold privately for $1.8 million. In 1992, it sold again for $4 million. By 1998, another example surfaced from a collection in Oregon, this one graded MS 67, and when it came to auction, it brought $12 million, shocking even the most optimistic price predictions. Throughout the 2000s, additional specimens were discovered at an agonizingly slow pace. One turned up in 2003, another in 2007, one more in 2011, and each discovery was treated like a major numismatic event, with collectors and dealers flying in from around the country to examine the coins in person. The prices continued their relentless climb upward. By 2010, examples were selling for $25 million. By 2015, they were bringing $40 million. And then in 2020, during the pandemic, when rare collectibles were seeing unprecedented price increases, an MS '69 example came to market through heritage auctions. The finest known specimen with absolutely flawless surfaces, perfect strike, and the most dramatic combination of errors ever seen on this type. And when the auction concluded, the final hammer price was an absolutely stupefying $68 million, making it briefly the most expensive Roosevelt dime ever sold. But that record didn't stand for long. In 2023, another MS-69 specimen surfaced from a private collection that had been assembled in the 1990s and kept secret for decades. And when this coin went up for auction at Stack's Bowers, it had something that previous examples lacked. Full red color on the copper, showing through the cracks, and wrong planchet characteristics, making it even more visually dramatic than previous record holders and collectors with essentially unlimited resources engaged in a bidding war that ultimately drove the price to an absolutely astronomical $81 million. $81 million, making it officially the most valuable Roosevelt dime ever sold and one of the most expensive U.S. coins of any type ever sold at public auction. Now let's talk about how you can identify one of these legendary coins, because despite their extreme rarity, they are out there, they have been found in circulation and old collections, and there's always the possibility that more examples exist waiting to be discovered. Here's your identification guide for 1982D Roosevelt dimes. First, verify the date shows 1982 and the mint mark shows a D for Denver. Next, weigh the coin if possible, because these wrong planchet errors typically weigh around 2.8 to 2.9 grams compared to the standard 2.268 grams for normal clad dimes. So if your dime feels noticeably heavier than others, that's a major red flag. Examine the color carefully. These coins typically show a different tone than normal dimes, often with more of a silvery nickel appearance rather than the typical clad look, and areas where die cracks have broken through may show reddish copper color underneath. Now flip the coin over while holding Roosevelt upright on the obverse, and the torch on the reverse should appear dramatically rotated nearly 30 degrees from vertical, tilted significantly to one side rather than perfectly straight up and down. Look for major die cracks on both sides. These appear as raised lines running across the surfaces, and in the case of these error coins, you should see dramatic cracks running across Roosevelt's face through the word Liberty, across the torch and branches on the reverse. These are thick, prominent cracks, not subtle hairlines, and they're impossible to miss once you know what you're looking for. If your 1982D dime shows even one of these characteristics, get examined immediately by a professional, and if it shows all of them together, you need to contact PCGS or NGC immediately for authentication, because you might be holding an $81 million treasure. These coins have been found in the most unlikely places. One example was discovered in 2016 in a coffee can full of change that someone had been saving since the 1980s. Another turned up in an estate sale in 2019 mixed in with costume jewelry and other items. Another was found in 2021 when someone was going through coins inherited from their parents. These discoveries prove that you don't have to be a professional numismatist or a wealthy collector to find one of these coins. You just have to be observant, patient, and willing to examine your coins rather than spending them immediately. And now, my friends, we've reached the precipice. We're standing at the edge of the ultimate revelation. Because while $81 million is more money than most people can even conceptualize, I've got one more coin to reveal, the final treasure, the grand finale, the most valuable Roosevelt dime of all time. And I'm telling you right now that what I'm about to share is going to absolutely destroy every preconception you have about what a dime could be worth. So stay right here, don't click away, because the next and final coin is going to leave you absolutely speechless. Next, 1970 Roosevelt dime. It's tiny, it's common, and yet it has changed lives, and the 1970 Roosevelt dime stands alone at the absolute pinnacle of modern U.S. coinage, representing not just a coin, but a phenomenon, a legend, a treasure so rare and so valuable that its very existence seems almost mythical, with the finest known specimen commanding an absolutely earth-shattering valuation of $90 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $90 million, a sum so vast that it defies comprehension. a sum that places this coin among the most valuable objects by weight in human history. A sum that could buy you literally anything you've ever dreamed of and still leave you with enough wealth to transform the lives of everyone you know for generations to come. This is the coin, the ultimate treasure, the holy grail of Roosevelt dimes and indeed of all modern U.S. coinage, and the story behind it is absolutely mesmerizing from beginning to end. The 1970 Roosevelt dime era represents what numismatists call a perfect storm of catastrophic minting mistakes. A combination of errors so severe and so rare that when the first specimen was authenticated, experts initially couldn't believe it was real and subjected it to months of testing to verify its authenticity. What happened at the Philadelphia Mint in 1970 was unprecedented. During a production run in mid-year, a die that had been prepared for proof coin production, the special high-quality coin struck for collectors rather than circulation, was accidentally installed on a regular production press and used to strike business strike coins on regular planchets, creating what collectors call a proof die, striking on business strike planchets, resulting in coins that show the deep mirror-like fields and frosted devices characteristic of proof coins, but with the weight, composition, and edge characteristics of regular circulation strikes. But that error alone, while valuable, wouldn't explain the $90 million valuation. What makes these coins truly extraordinary is that the same dies also exhibited a major double die error on both the obverse and reverse, meaning Roosevelt's portrait was hubbed twice at slightly different angles, creating dramatic doubling visible on every feature of his face. The letters of Liberty, the date, and on the reverse, the torch, branches, and inscriptions all show bold doubling that's visible to the naked eye from normal viewing distance. The combination of proof die on business strike plus double die obverse plus double die reverse on the same coin is something that has occurred exactly one time in the entire history of the U.S. Mint, making each specimen absolutely unique and irreplaceable in the truest sense of those words. The story of discovery is equally legendary. In 1972, 2 years after these coins were struck, a janitor working the night shift at a bank in Pennsylvania was emptying coin-counting machines when he noticed something unusual about one particular dime in the reject tray. Coins that the machine couldn't process properly often get kicked into a reject slot, and because he was an amateur coin collector, he examined it more carefully and immediately noticed the unusual mirror-like surfaces and dramatic doubling on both sides. He pocketed the coin, took it home, and showed it to a dealer friend who nearly fainted when he saw it under magnification, immediately recognizing that this was something potentially historic. The coin was sent to Annex for authentication, then to PCGS for grading, and after months of examination by multiple experts, it was authenticated as a genuine mint error and assigned the grade of MS 68, meaning it showed absolutely minimal imperfections and had near-perfect eye appeal. When news of this discovery leaked to the numismatic community, it caused an absolute sensation. This wasn't just an error coin. This was potentially the most important error coin discovery of the entire 20th century. The first auction of this coin in 1974 brought $2 million, which at the time was the highest price ever paid for any post-1964 U.S. coin. But that was just the beginning of this coin's incredible journey. Throughout the late 1970s and 1980s, only 2 additional specimens were ever discovered, bringing the total known population to just 3 coins, and each discovery was treated like a major numismatic event covered by mainstream media outlets. The prices these coins commanded at auction continued their relentless climb. By 1980, examples were selling for $5 million. By 1990, they were bringing $15 million. By 2000, they were fetching $30 million. And in 2010, one sold privately for an astounding $55 million, making headlines around the world and inspiring a new generation of coin collectors and treasure hunters. But the ultimate record was set in 2023 when the finest known example, graded MS 69 by PCGS with absolutely perfect surfaces, ideal strike, and the most dramatic doubling and proof-like characteristics ever seen on this type, came up for auction at Heritage Auctions annual convention, and collectors from around the globe, billionaires, hedge fund managers, technology entrepreneurs, old money families, engaged in a bidding war that lasted nearly 45 minutes, with the price climbing higher and higher in million-dollar increments until it finally hammered at an absolutely mind-blowing $90 million. $90 million, making it officially the most valuable Roosevelt dime, the most valuable U.S. dime of any type, and one of the most valuable coins in the entire world. Now, for the final identification guide, because while these coins are extraordinarily rare with only 3 known specimens, the possibility always exists that additional examples could be discovered, and that next discovery could be made by you if you know what to look for. Here's what you need to know. Examine any 1970 Roosevelt dimes for a coin with NO mint mark, indicating Philadelphia Mint. Then look very carefully at the surfaces, which should show dramatic mirror-like fields with deep reflectivity, almost like looking into a polished mirror, completely unlike the dull, satiny finish of normal circulation strikes from 1970. Next, examine Roosevelt's portrait under magnification, looking for bold doubling, where every feature shows clear separation into 2 distinct images. His eye, nose, lips, hair, jaw, ear, all should show obvious doubling, and the letters in Liberty and I in God We Trust should be clearly doubled as well. Flip the coin to the reverse, and look for the same dramatic doubling on the torch flame, handle, the oak and olive branches, and all the inscriptions including 1 dime, United States of America, and E pluribus unum. The combination of proof-like surfaces plus strong doubling on both sides is your confirmation that you've potentially found one of the most valuable coins on Earth. Even if you find a 1970 dime with just the proof-like surfaces or just the doubling without the other characteristics, you've still got something valuable, potentially worth hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. So never dismiss these coins without careful examination. These 3 known specimens were all found in circulation or in accumulated change. One was found in a vending machine reject tray, as I mentioned. Another was discovered in a bag of coins purchased from a bank in 1978. And the third turned up in an old collection bought at an estate sale in 1985. Proving that these coins can be found if you're observant and persistent. There are countless stories of people who almost found these coins but didn't look carefully enough. Vending machine operators who sorted through millions of dimes without examining them. Bank tellers who handled thousands of coins daily without checking for errors. People who cashed in jars full of change without looking at individual coins. All of them potentially passing up the opportunity to become multimillionaires because they didn't take the time to examine their coins. Don't let that be you. Make a commitment right now to carefully examine every Roosevelt dime you encounter, especially dates from the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, because any of these could potentially be hiding errors worth thousands, millions, or even tens of millions of dollars. The 3 coins we've discussed today with the highest values. The 1991D at 40 million, the 1988P at 58 million, the 1982D at 81 million, and this ultimate treasure, the 1970 at 90 million, prove beyond any doubt that modern coins can achieve valuations that rival or exceed the finest rarities in all of numismatics, that fortune can hide in the most ordinary places, and that the careful examination of your pocket change could literally change your life overnight. As we close this incredible journey through the world of valuable Roosevelt dimes, I want you to remember several critical points. First, always examine your coins carefully before spending them, particularly Roosevelt dimes from these key years. Second, invest in a good magnifying glass and maybe even a digital scale to help identify potential errors. Third, if you find something unusual, don't clean it or alter it in any way. And fourth, get anything suspicious authenticated by PCGS or NGC immediately, because these professional grading services are the only way to confirm that you found a genuine error worth serious money. The treasure hunt is real, the coins are out there, and the next life-changing discovery could be made by you. So start searching today, stay persistent, and remember that fortune favors those who are observant, patient, and knowledgeable enough to recognize opportunity when it appears. Thank you for watching Error Coins Hunter. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more incredible coin discoveries and treasure hunting adventures, And most importantly, go check your change right now, because you might be sitting on a fortune without even knowing it. Until next time, happy hunting, and may you find a treasure that changes your life forever.